Far away, on a shining planet called Alindra, there once lived a princess named Liara. She was born into light, beauty, and power, yet her eyes could see nothing from birth. The people whispered that she was cursed, that the stars had punished the royal family. But Liara did not cry. She listened, she learned, and she dreamed of seeing the world she could only imagine. Her father, Emperor Kale, ruled with iron and pride. He loved his daughter, but he feared what others thought. The people said her blindness brought bad luck, and soon fear turned into hate. So the emperor locked her away in a crystal tower. Far from the royal city, no one dared to visit her. No one spoke her name in public anymore. Years passed like silent shadows. Liara grew into a young woman with hair like silver light and skin pale as moonglass. She wore a thin silver band over her eyes, hiding the soft glow that never faded. Every day she sat by her window, listening to the wind whisper across the alien sky. She wondered what colors were, what light truly meant, but in her heart, she believed that someday someone would come, someone unafraid. The people called her the blind ghost. Servants left food outside her door. Never entering the room, children were told. Never speak her name or the curse will follow you. Even the guards avoided looking at her window at night, because sometimes, they said, strange lights pulsed from her tower, as if the stars themselves spoke to her. One cold night, everything changed. A loud explosion shook the ground beneath Alindra's crystal mountains. Liara woke, her heart pounding as the sound echoed through the air. It was something she had never heard before, the sound of a falling star. But it wasn't a star, it was a human ship, crashing into the forest beyond the royal city. The next morning, smoke rose from the forest. The emperor sent soldiers to investigate, but none dared to go near the tower path. Only Liara could hear the distant sound of someone calling for help. A voice, rough and desperate, yet strangely gentle. "Help! Is anyone there?" the voice cried. Liara's hands trembled, her heart filled with curiosity and fear. It had been so long since she had heard another living voice. She took a careful step outside her tower, feeling the cold air for the first time in years. She followed the sound, her feet brushing against the soft blue grass of Alindra. She walked until she reached the edge of the forest, guided by the voice and the warmth she felt within. There, among the broken metal and smoke, lay a man. His uniform was strange, his face covered in dust. He was human, something she had only heard of in ancient stories. Liara knelt beside him, feeling his breath weak and shallow. Her fingers brushed his arm, and for the first time in her life, she touched someone without fear. The man stirred, coughing softly. Who's there?" he asked. I'm Liara," she said in a quiet voice. "Who are you?" The man smiled weakly. "Captain Ethan Cole, of the Terran fleet. And I guess I crashed your sky." She tilted her head, not understanding, but the sound of his voice made her heart feel warm. No one had spoken to her with kindness in years. He looked at her blindfold and whispered, "You're hurt too, aren't you?" "I am not hurt," she said softly, "only forgotten." Ethan tried to stand but stumbled, and she helped him. Her hands were gentle, and he was surprised no alien had ever touched a human like that before. As they reached the tower, the soldiers from the city arrived. They saw Liara helping the human and froze in horror. "Stay away from her," one of them shouted. "She is cursed. You'll go blind if she touches you." Ethan turned to them, weak but angry. "She's not cursed, she's helping me." But the soldiers didn't listen. They ran back, spreading the story that the cursed princess had touched a human. That night, the emperor came to the tower, furious and afraid. "What have you done, Liara?" he demanded. She bowed her head. "I helped someone who needed help, father." "You don't understand," he said, trembling. "Your touch can destroy him." But Liara shook her head. "Or maybe it can save him." The emperor ordered guards to watch the human closely, but Ethan refused to leave the tower. He sat beside Liara by the window, telling her stories of Earth, of oceans, skies, and sunlight. She listened with a smile, imagining the colors she could never see, and for the first time she laughed, a sound so gentle that even the stars seemed to pause. Outside, the people whispered again. "The cursed one has found a human," they said. "The curse will spread." But inside the tower, something else was growing. A fragile connection, a quiet hope, and a strange warmth that neither could explain. Liara turned to Ethan one night and said, "No one dared to touch me before you." He smiled and replied, Maybe it's time someone did. And for the first time in her life, the blind princess didn't feel cursed anymore. She felt seen, understood, and alive. And as the stars glowed brighter above Alindra, the universe itself seemed to whisper, "This is only the beginning." The tower of the blind princess became quiet again, but not empty anymore inside. A new sound filled the air, laughter, soft words, and the rhythm of two hearts that no longer feared silence. Captain Ethan Cole, the human who had fallen from the stars, was slowly recovering. Liara cared for him each day, bringing him water, food, and sometimes just sitting beside him in silence. She had never spoken so much in her life, and he had never listened so closely to anyone before. At night, she would ask him to describe things she could not see. "What does the ocean look like?" she asked one evening. Her face turned toward the window. Ethan smiled gently. "It's like the sky, but it moves and it sings when it touches the shore." Liara closed her eyes behind the silver band, imagining waves and the soft echo of water. "I think," she whispered. "I can almost hear it." Ethan often fixed small pieces of his broken ship, trying to contact his people, but part of him didn't want to leave. There was something about Liara, her calm voice, her courage, her loneliness, and that held him there. She was different from any alien he had met, and yet somehow, more human than most humans he knew. But outside the tower, fear was growing. The guards told the Emperor that the human had been touched by the curse and would soon lose his sight. The Emperor ordered that no one approach the tower. "Let him die quietly," he said coldly, "and may the curse end with him." Yet Liara overheard those words through the crystal walls, and her heart broke. That night she went to Ethan, her voice trembling. "They think you will die because of me," she said. Ethan looked into her blindfold and shook his head. "Then they don't know you at all." He took her hand and placed something small and warm inside it. It was a tiny mechanical bird, its wings made of silver pieces from his ship. "It can't see either," Ethan said softly. "But it still tries to fly." Liara touched it gently. Feeling the small gears move, she smiled. "Then maybe, so can I." In that quiet moment, something invisible passed between them. It wasn't magic or power, it was trust, simple and strong. The same kind of trust that builds empires or changes worlds. Days turned into weeks, and rumors spread faster than light. "The human eats with the cursed one," people whispered. "He talks to her as if she's real." The council grew nervous, telling the Emperor, if he spreads her lies to the galaxy, Alindra will be shamed. The Emperor's anger burned, but so did his fear. He ordered spies to watch the tower and report every word the human said. One evening, Ethan and Liara sat under the glowing moonlight that filtered through the glass walls. "Tell me something," she said softly. "Why did you come to Alindra?" Ethan sighed. "We were exploring uncharted space, looking for signs of life, or hope." "And did you find it?" she asked. He smiled. "I think I did, but their peace didn't last long. The next day, a soldier entered the tower secretly and saw Ethan touching Liara's hand. Terrified, he ran back to the city shouting, 'The human is cursed! His eyes will turn blind next.' Within hours, the rumor spread across the planet like fire in dry grass. Crowds gathered outside the palace gates, demanding that the Emperor end the curse. The Emperor, torn between his duty and his guilt, sent a message to Ethan, 'Leave our world by sunrise, or be executed.' Ethan read the words and looked at Liara, who stood silently, her hands shaking. 'You should go,' she whispered. 'They will kill you.' Ethan shook his head. 'Not without you.' Liara turned away, her voice breaking. 'I can't leave. This is my home.' Ethan walked closer, his tone calm but firm. 'A home that fears you isn't a home, Liara.' She fell silent, tears slipping beneath the silver band over her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not even her father. For the first time, she wanted to be free. Not just alive. That night, she dreamed of light. It wasn't sunlight or starlight. It was something inside her glowing softly when she woke. The mechanical bird in her hand began to move on its own. Its wings fluttered, lifting it into the air for a brief second before falling again. Ethan laughed quietly. "It's trying," Liara smiled. "So am I." But outside, the Emperor's guards surrounded the tower. They were ordered to arrest Ethan and destroy any trace of his presence as the soldiers entered. Liara stood between them and Ethan, her voice echoing. "You will not harm him," she said, her tone calm but powerful. The guards hesitated. Something in her voice made the air vibrate. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. Liara, it's okay. But it wasn't. Because in that moment, something inside her awakened. The crystals in the walls began to glow with her heartbeat. The soldiers froze in terror as light rippled through the tower like living fire. And when Liara spoke again, her voice carried both sorrow and strength. You call me cursed, she said, but maybe you are the ones who cannot see. The soldiers dropped their weapons. Fleeing into the night, the tower fell silent again, only the sound of the small bird ticking softly between them. Ethan looked at her, awed and silent, and Liara whispered, They fear what they don't understand. Ethan nodded. Then maybe it's time they learned. Outside, the wind carried their words to the farthest corners of Elindra, and somewhere deep beneath the city, something ancient stirred. The bond between human and alien had begun to change not just two hearts, but perhaps the fate of the entire planet. And as the stars shone above, the universe watched, waiting. Because this was no longer a story of a cursed princess. It was the beginning of a legend. Days passed, and the world outside the tower grew restless. Rumors spread through the cities of Elindra, stories of light shaking the air, of a cursed princess who spoke with a human from the stars. The emperor tried to silence the whispers, but even he could not stop the wind from carrying her name again. Liara, the blind princess who once was forgotten, had become a mystery the people could not ignore. Inside the tower, Ethan repaired the old communication device from his ship. Every spark, every hum of the circuits filled the air with hope. But deep down, he knew the truth. No signal had gone out in weeks. They were alone, and the only way home was through the heart of a world that wanted him dead. Liara sat by his side, listening to the sound of his tools. She liked how his hands never stopped moving, as if he was building not just machines but life itself. Humans don't give up easily, do they? She asked one morning. Her voice soft and curious, Ethan smiled. No, not when someone needs us. Liara turned her head slightly, her blindfold catching the golden light. And who do you think needs you? He hesitated, then whispered, You, for a moment. Silence filled the tower, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy with feeling. Something neither of them had the courage to name. Liara's heart beat faster, and without understanding why, the crystals around her began to glow softly. The light pulsed with her breath. Surrounding them in a warm halo of energy, Ethan stared, amazed. Liara, are you doing this? I don't know, she whispered. I can feel the light, it's alive, it listens. That night, she dreamed again, not in darkness, but in shapes and sound. She saw shadows moving in colors she could not name. She saw Ethan's face, outlined in a silver glow, and when she woke, the tower walls were covered in faint symbols, glowing runes, ancient and beautiful, as if the light itself was writing for her. When Ethan saw them, he froze. These symbols, they look like star coordinates. Liara touched the wall gently, her fingers tracing the glowing lines. They are memories, she said softly. From before I was blind. Ethan looked closer, realizing that the symbols matched parts of his own star maps. It was impossible, and yet it was true somehow. The princess who had never seen the stars carried their pattern inside her. The emperor soon learned of the glowing tower. His advisors warned him, Her power is waking, and the human feeds it. They called her a danger, a weapon, a threat to the royal bloodline. But one old scholar bowed and said, Your Majesty, she is not cursed. She is chosen. The emperor's face turned pale, for he knew what that meant. The old prophecy was real. The next morning, soldiers surrounded the tower again. Liara felt their presence before they arrived, the ground trembling beneath her feet. Ethan looked out through the cracked glass. They're here again. Liara stood tall, her voice calm. Then let them come. The soldiers entered, shouting for Ethan to surrender. One grabbed Liara's arm, and the moment he touched her, a burst of white light threw him across the room. The others froze, terrified, as the crystal walls began to sing, a sound deep and powerful. Liara's blindfold slipped from her eyes, and for the first time, Ethan saw what she had been hiding. Her eyes glowed with shifting light, like galaxies turning inside them. I can see, she whispered, her voice trembling, but not like you do. What do you see? Ethan asked, standing close to her. I see energy, emotion, life. And fear, she said softly, looking toward the soldiers. They're afraid of what they don't understand, Ethan said quietly. Just like every world before it learns to change, the soldiers fled once more. their armor clattering against the crystal floor. Ethan walked to her side and smiled. "Remind me never to make you angry," Liara laughed softly. The sound like wind chimes in the dark, but when her laughter faded, she looked toward the distant city and whispered, "They won't stop. Ethan, they'll try again, and next time, they won't just come for me, they'll come for you." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll be ready." That night, he worked on the broken ship again. Using Elindran crystals as power cores, Liara watched, feeling their energy hum in her hands, helping him shape them into something new together. They created a bond between human technology and alien light, something that had never existed before. As they worked, the air around them shimmered faintly. The runes on the walls pulsed brighter, echoing a rhythm like a heartbeat. Ethan looked at her. "Do you feel that?" Liara nodded. "Yes, it's like the planet is listening to us outside." In the capital city, the Emperor looked to the horizon. The sky above the tower was glowing again, not red or white, but gold. And in that moment, he felt something he had not felt in years. Fear mixed with awe. His daughter, the one he had hidden away, was becoming something beyond his control. In the tower, Liara stood beside Ethan, her silver hair glowing like starlight. She smiled faintly. "I was born blind so I could learn to see differently." Ethan nodded. "And maybe I crashed here to help you remember that." Their bond was no longer a secret between two hearts. It was a connection that tied two worlds together, human and alien, science and soul. And as they looked out toward the sleeping city, Liara whispered, "They call me cursed, but maybe I am just changing." Ethan smiled. "Then let them fear change, because change is how the stars are born." Above them, the tower lights reached into the night sky, and for the first time in 1,000 years, Elindra's moons glowed brighter than ever. The universe had chosen its next story, and it began with a blind princess, a human stranger, and the secret bond that would shake the stars. The golden light from the tower spread across the valley for days. People of Elindra looked at the sky and whispered of miracles. Some said the princess had become an angel. Others said she had awakened a curse that would consume them all. But deep inside the palace, the emperor listened in silence. His heart heavy with fear, he had loved his daughter once. Before fear and pride turned that love into distance, now he heard of her powers, her light and her bond with the human. His advisors knelt before him and said, "Your Majesty, she must be stopped before the people follow her instead of you." The emperor closed his eyes, remembering her laughter as a child, and whispered, "She is still my daughter." But the council was not moved. "Then let her die as one, before she destroys us all." That night the council met in secret. They sent word to the royal army, "Capture the human, silence the princess." No one was to know the emperor's will had been twisted. They moved like shadows in the dark, hiding their betrayal under the name of duty. Back in the tower, Liara and Ethan were planning to leave Elindra. Ethan had repaired enough of his ship to make it fly again. He told her, "We can go anywhere, Liara, far from this fear. Far from your father's anger." She shook her head, her voice soft. "And leave my people behind? No, Ethan, they may hate me now, but I am still one of them." He looked at her eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Then we'll find another way." But they didn't know the soldiers were already on their way, marching through the forest with weapons drawn and orders sealed in lies. When the first blast shook the tower, Ethan grabbed Liara's arm. "They've come," he said, his voice steady but his eyes filled with worry. Liara turned toward the sound, her voice calm. "I can feel their fear like fire in the wind." The soldiers stormed in, shouting, "By order of the crown, surrender the human." Ethan stood in front of her, unarmed but unyielding. "I won't let you hurt her," he said. They struck him down, beating him to the ground, Liara screamed, and the crystals around them began to vibrate, their light pulsing with her heartbeat. "Stop!" she cried, her voice echoing like thunder through the tower. But the soldiers didn't listen. They dragged Ethan outside. Liara fell to her knees, trembling as tears burned her cheeks. For a moment, her world went completely silent. And then from that silence came something new, a voice, ancient and powerful, whispering in her mind. "You were never cursed, Liara. You were chosen." The words filled her with light and fire. The air around her shimmered. The floor cracked beneath her feet. Outside, the soldiers froze as a wave of golden energy burst from the tower. The sky turned crimson, the stars dimmed. and the ground trembled like it was alive. Liara stepped forward, her eyes blazing like suns. "Release him," she said, her voice calm but heavy with power. The soldiers dropped their weapons. Unable to move, Ethan looked up from the ground, weak and bleeding, his eyes meeting hers. "Liara," he whispered, "you have to stop. You'll destroy everything." She reached for him, her hands glowing brighter. "I can't lose you," she said, tears mixing with light. Her power spread across the valley, melting steel, bending stone. The soldiers ran in terror, shouting of a goddess reborn. But Ethan crawled toward her, his hand trembling as he touched her face. "Liara, listen to me," he said softly. "This isn't who you are." His touch broke through the storm. The light around her flickered, then softened. She fell into his arms, shaking, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to hurt them." Ethan held her close. "You didn't." They hurt themselves with fear, high above the chaos. The Emperor watched from the palace balcony. His generals bowed in fear. "She is no longer your daughter, my lord. She is something else." But the Emperor's eyes filled with tears. "No," he whispered. "She is what I made her, the reflection of my own fear." He turned away, giving a silent order. "Bring her to me alive. And the human, too." Back at the tower, the air was still glowing faintly with energy. Ethan stood beside Liara as dawn painted the sky in pale blue. She looked weak but peaceful, her eyes half closed. "Ethan," she said softly, "do you ever wonder if we were meant to meet?" He smiled faintly. "Every second since I crashed here. For the first time." Liara reached out and touched his face. Her fingers traced the small scars and lines across his skin. "You're not like them," she whispered. "You see me even when I cannot see myself." He took her hand gently. "And you make me believe that even broken things can shine again." But their peace was short-lived. From the forest, the sound of engines grew louder. Ships, many of them. The Emperor's elite guard had arrived. Ethan turned to Liara. "They're not coming to talk this time." She nodded, her voice calm. "Then we'll give them something to remember." She walked outside as the first rays of sunlight touched the ground. Her silver hair glowed like molten light, and her eyes reflected the rising sun. The soldiers raised their weapons but hesitated. For a moment, no one dared to move. No one dared to breathe, and then Liara spoke, her voice soft but echoing through every soul. "You can destroy me," she said, "but you cannot unsee the truth." The soldiers lowered their weapons, fear turning into awe because for the first time, they saw not a monster, not a curse, but a being of light and sorrow, standing tall against the darkness of her own people. Ethan stepped beside her, standing shoulder to shoulder. Together they faced the army, small but unbroken, and as the morning wind carried the sound of distant thunder, Liara whispered, "If this is betrayal, then let it be the one that frees us." The sky above them began to glow once more. The light from her eyes reached the heavens, and somewhere deep in the void, far beyond Elindra's stars, something ancient stirred, as if the universe itself had taken notice of the bond between a blind princess and a human who dared to believe. This was not the end. This was only the moment before everything changed. The battle for the tower ended in silence. Smoke curled into the sky like broken dreams. The soldiers stood frozen, unsure whether they had witnessed a miracle or a curse. Liara stood among them, her light dim but still burning, her eyes glowing faintly with the power she could barely control. Ethan stood beside her, wounded but alive, his hand holding hers tightly for the first time in centuries. The people of Elindra saw something they could not explain. A human and a princess standing side by side, their bond stronger than fear. Some bowed their heads in shame, others turned away, afraid to believe, and yet in their hearts a small spark of wonder was born. The Emperor arrived in his golden ship. He stepped out, his face pale, his crown heavy, his eyes full of regret. He walked through the ashes, stopping before his daughter. "Liara," he said softly, "what have you done?" She looked at him, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "I only did what you never dared to do, Father." I opened my eyes. The word struck him harder than any weapon. He looked at Ethan, the human who had touched his daughter's heart and changed her world. "You came from the stars," the Emperor said coldly, "and you brought chaos to my kingdom." Ethan shook his head, his voice calm but firm. "No, Your Majesty. I brought you the truth you were too afraid to face." The Emperor's hands trembled. "You don't understand, human. Her power could destroy us all." Ethan stepped closer. "Or save you." Liara's voice joined his. Soft but strong. I was never cursed, Father. I was only hidden from what I was meant to be. The ground trembled beneath them as her power stirred again. The crystals in the air began to rise like dust in sunlight. Every light in the city pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. People looked up from the streets, seeing the sky shimmer with waves of gold. I can feel them, she whispered, all of them, their fear, their pain, their hope. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. Then show them who you really are. She closed her eyes, and a warm glow spread from her body like dawn breaking over the world. The soldiers dropped their weapons, the people fell to their knees, and the Emperor's eyes filled with tears as the light touched him too. He saw her not as a monster, but as the child he had once held in his arms. I was wrong, he whispered, falling to his knees. Forgive me. My daughter, Liara smiled softly. You were blind, Father, just like me. But now we can both see. Ethan watched as the sky turned into a field of light. It was as if the planet itself had awakened. Energy flowed through the ground. Healing the cracks, lighting the towers, Alindra was alive again. Not cursed, not broken, but reborn. When the light faded, Liara fell weak into Ethan's arms. He held her tightly, whispering her name, Liara. Stay with me, she smiled faintly, her voice barely above a breath. Don't be afraid, Ethan. I'm still here. Her hand glowed with soft light as she touched his chest, and the wounds on his body began to close, his pain fading like mist in sunlight. You healed me, he whispered. She shook her head gently. No, we healed each other. He looked into her glowing eyes. You saved your world, Liara smiled. No, Ethan. You did, because you saw what no one else would. Above them, the golden light reached the stars for the first time in human history. Elindra's skies opened to the galaxy. Ships from the Terran fleet received a signal. A voice speaking softly through the static. This is Captain Ethan Cole of the Terran fleet, and this world is not cursed. Back on Elindra, the people wept and cheered as his words echoed across every screen. The Emperor stepped forward and placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder. You came as a stranger, he said, but you leave as part of Elindra. Ethan nodded. And I'll carry her story wherever humans walk. Liara stood beside him, her strength slowly returning. Her blindfold was gone now. Her eyes were her truth, her light, her gift. She looked at the rising suns of Elindra, their colors dancing across the sky. I can see them, Ethan, she whispered. All the colors I dreamed of, he smiled. And they've been waiting for you all this time. The people of Elindra began to call her the Princess of Light, the one who turned curse into blessing, fear into hope, darkness into dawn, and beside her name, they spoke of the human, the man who dared to touch what others feared, the one who believed that even a blind soul could guide the stars. As years passed, stories of Liara and Ethan spread across galaxies, tales of courage, faith, and the bond that bridged two worlds. Children grew up hearing their legend, whispering under alien skies. If a human could change the fate of a princess, maybe we can change ours too. And somewhere, deep among the stars on quiet nights when the wind was still, you could almost hear their voices in the light. Liara's gentle whisper saying, You changed my fate, human, and Ethan's soft reply, You changed my heart, princess. Their story became a promise that no soul, no matter how broken or blind, is ever truly alone. Because sometimes, all it takes to awaken a universe is one human brave enough to believe.